Agriculture on the move.
Agricole mouvement.
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 Good day again, viewers. Welcome to the program, Agriculture on the Move. My name is Philip Sidney, your host. Today our topic is World Wetlands Day, and the theme, protecting wetlands for our common future. With me to discuss this program is Mr. Pius Hins to my right. He is the Assistant Chief Forest Officer attached to the Department of Forestry. And next to him is the lovely Miss Makiba Felix, who is not a thorn between but the guys next to her are thorns because she's a bloom between the two, and she is a fisheries biologist attached to the Department of Fisheries, and of course Miguel Montut from the Water Resource Specialist at the WRMA. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Pius, I started with you as a lead man. Forest will take the lead in that direction. People about wetlands. Dissect wetlands first.
Okay, so around St. Lucia, as a small island nation, we have a number of different, wetlands, different types of forests and so on. But basically, we are going to zero in on the wetlands. When we speak of the term wetland, more or less, we are talking about any area of land that is covered or saturated with water, and that could be either temporary or permanent, or seasonal or permanent, and it could also be either natural or man-made. So around St. Lucia, we have approximately 8 different types of forest, natural forest, and then you'd find wetlands forming. You'd find wetlands. We have about 2 main types of natural wetlands in terms of mangroves. We have a number of mangroves all around our island, and also you have freshwater swamp forest and so on. So we have these. You have freshwater swamp forest and you have the mangrove forest and so on.
So let's look at the theme. Dissect the theme for me.
Yeah. So protecting wetlands for our common future. We have identified the great importance that our wetlands play, for a number of different functions, for biodiversity conservation, for even human well-being. I mean, the great value that they have for our coastal protection, shoreline protection, nurseries for fish, even recreation, things like snorkeling and a whole bunch of things. So we really and truly in St. Lucia need to appreciate the great value that our wetlands play in our very livelihood, in our very lives and so on. And what we have realized is that in St. Lucia typically, we do not unfortunately appreciate our wetlands. So most times persons might see a wetland as a wasteland or as an area, as a dumping site. So you find the majority of our wetlands, are highly degraded. And so we need to raise awareness, as it pertains to the great value, the great importance that these wetlands play, not only for us now, but also for the future. And the value, the intrinsic value that those wetlands have, it will transcend generations. So we need to protect it, and we need to learn to appreciate it.
Okay, great. But about the impact of wetlands on the fishery sector. Give us a broad feeling about that.
Well, as it relates to the fisheries sector, one of the key areas that we look at in terms of wetlands is the mangrove ecosystems, because they have a variety of benefits to the fisheries sector and to our fishers. So like Pius mentioned, one of the benefits is that it acts as a nursery or breeding ground for a lot of fish, juvenile fish and other aquatic organisms. And that helps our fishers because these juveniles would then enter the marine ecosystem and then they would be able to catch more fish. The mangrove systems, they also act as filters, water filters or purifiers. So they help stop some of the pollutants that come from the streams and the rivers from entering our waterways, and they also reduce on the amount of sediments that enter our marine space. And this is useful because the sediments would smother our seagrass beds and our coral reefs, destroying the habitats, which we know are important for fish and other marine users. Mangrove ecosystems, they also help with shoreline stability, and they help break the waves and storm surges that come, so they help protect our beaches and other coastal environments in the area.
Okay. Ms. Montut, from a water standpoint, the impact of water on the wetlands.
Okay, well, Mr. Haynes mentioned that the sort of different types of wetlands. You have wetlands which are from the coastal environment. Also, you have freshwater wetlands. Typically, you get those freshwater wetlands in floodplains, for instance, the cul-de-sac area. There's a huge floodplain there. Floodplains usually at high flow after heavy rainfall usually get a lot of flooding. That's one of the reasons the cul-de-sac area is an area which is very prone to flooding. We also have some wetlands within the interior, but they're sort of small in terms of smaller scale. These wetlands are, you could basically see the act as sort of sinks, collection points for water. It's sort of cyclic. So typically you have precipitation which occurs in the catchments, right? So and it percolates through the rock. It goes through the rock, and then it transmits through the rock. The water transmits through the rock as springs, right? And those springs, right, when the springs leave, these free-flowing springs create sort of wetlands and marshes. I'm pretty sure many individuals, tour guides, etc., have seen those springs in St. Lucia, and around those areas are sort of freshwater, small freshwater marshes, right? So that water now percolates again into the ground, and it's filtered. Like Makiba said, it's filtered by the ground, right? So it filters whatever contaminants, overland contaminants, and also it's released. The ground, the wetlands, they act as sponges, and it slowly releases the water into the streams. And that's very important, especially during the dry season, maintaining the flows in the rivers during the dry season. So basically, if those wetlands are eradicated during the dry season, the flows would be much less, and especially with climate change, that's very important.
In fact, I'm happy you mentioned climate change, because I was just asking land degradation and, of course, pollution. How are you going to prevent that from happening? Yeah. What mitigating factors are there to avoid that from happening?
Well, it's a matter of public sensitization. One of the things that we've noted, especially in developed areas which are more developed in the north, as it pertains to wetlands, is backfilling. You have a lot of backfilling because it's a matter of private property. You know, you have your private property. You figure, okay, it's mine, and at the end of the day, yes, you have a right to do developments on your property. But sometimes, you know, especially when you have wetlands near the river banks, in those areas near the river banks, you have backfilling there. This is the swampy areas. This, if it's not done properly, it could actually create issues, you know, in terms of sedimentation for the rivers, etc. So we advise, you know, the public, you know, when those developments are happening, to look at sort of nature-based solutions. You know, the solutions that you could use. You could, you know, use vetiver grass around those areas. You could use smaller shrubs along those areas to help stabilize the soil along those areas.
So, as it pertains to climate change, wetlands play a really important role as a carbon sink, because, believe it or not, forested wetlands in particular, these, you know, they absorb even more carbon than our rainforest, for example. And so, like, you know, they might absorb as high as 3 times as much as the rainforest. So we need to develop, you know, even land policies. We need to really look at mangrove protection from the highest level down to the lowest level. I mean, it has to be an all hands on deck approach, you know, from the communities and the resource users, you know, the landowners. Everybody has to be involved in the whole work of conserving our mangrove ecosystems, you know, and also making wise use of those mangroves. I mean, those mangroves, I mean, they are teeming with resources, you know, a diversity of flora, fauna, you know, biodiversity. And so what we want to change in St. Lucia is people's mindset as it relates to the value of these mangroves, because people don't appreciate them, you know. And one of the biggest problems we have with our mangroves in St. Lucia is the indiscriminate disposal of garbage.
Garbage, yes.
A lot of solid waste, you know, in our mangrove ecosystem, a lot of plastics. And, you know, believe it or not, people look for these secluded areas to go and dump, you know, and this really, really is something that we need to look at. The enforcement is necessary from the highest level. You know, we need to enforce our laws, and, you know, we need to, you know, enact even more laws if necessary, so we can help, you know, curb that problem. The sensitization is very important, public sensitization.
But, how are you all doing this? I mean, is this something, because the problem I have with a lot of these days, wetland days, to me, it's only when the day comes you're hearing what's happening, but there's no continuity.
Yes.
You know, so I mean, what are you all doing to ensure there's continuity, there's education from the school level? I know there's activities which I'll touch on in a while, but what's happening for continuity?
Yeah, so I mean, we need it has to be a continuous process. The public needs to be aware of the great importance that our wetlands play in our ecosystem, in our natural environment. I mean, from the youth up to the oldest, everybody needs to be aware. It needs to be a consistent endeavor. You know, resources need to be pumped for those things to happen in a sustainable way. But forestry, I mean, under the Ramsar Convention, I mean, Ramsar or the Wetlands Convention, I mean, the whole framework is provided for us to, you know, conserve our wetlands and make wise use of it. But yes, I agree that we need to make it more sustainable.
Yeah.
It needs to be a more continuous activity. It needs to be one that needs to be in the face of the public
Exactly.
all the time. You
And
know,
not only that,
signage is important as well.
Yeah, because, okay, today, I mean, you have forestry, you have fisheries, you have water resources, okay? Yes. What happens after that? Is there continued genesis between the three to ensure, to maintain our wetlands?
Well, the synergy is necessary. I mean, the
Well,
synergy
that's a very, very, very good point. And I think one of the, Pius mentioned constructed wetlands, because in the definition of wetlands, he mentioned natural or man-made, right? And I also mentioned nature-based solutions.
Right.
So there have been initiatives pushing a lot of nature-based solutions, as I mentioned, vetiver, etc. I think heliconia is one of the plants which are used in sort of constructed wetlands. And Wasco, I think under the Caribbean project, there is a constructed wetland initiative in Viewfort in Black Bay, in Viewfort, which is an initiative. So there is an awareness there that there is a need, a value in those the soft structures for actually promoting sustainability. I do agree that money needs to be done, but especially as it pertains to nature-based solutions, looking at solutions which are not hard structures and sort of more affordable. I think we sort of making some strides in that direction, especially from the international standpoint. And like I mentioned, it is something that Wasco is focusing on.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, in addition to all of that, we also work with other organizations and partners. So for example, the St. Lucia National Trust, I know they do a lot of work, especially in the Makote mangrove. So like Pius mentioned, it's a collaborative approach, and we should try to get the help from other organizations and grants and other funders to help support the goal to restore and maintain our wetlands.
But are we getting that?
Yes, yeah.
I'm not hearing that.
But yeah, we have also, Pius mentioned, he mentioned solid waste, but there's also liquid waste, right?
Yes,
And liquid waste and solid waste, they sort of come together. Actually, under the Solid Waste Management Authority, litter, liquid and solid are considered to be litter, right? So, and we sometimes have issues in terms of oil issues, oil containment issues, oil spillage and that kind of thing. So we've been active as it pertains to addressing those issues when there's a complaint or there's an indication that there might have been an oil spill or some fish kills, etc. The WRMA and the fishery is usually the first point of contact, right, to actually do those investigations and then bring in other parties, for instance, the oil spill committee, etc. So it's a sort of a collaborative approach. The fisheries, they act there is some mention in terms of there's some legislation as it pertains to the contamination of wetlands, especially mangroves, for instance. So one of the recommendations for that, especially the oil spills, is, those garages, etc., invest in sort of oil spill kits, etc. If you have oil storage tanks, have secondary containment for your tanks. So if there's a spill, at least it could trap. So these are some of the recommendations that we've made on when we've done those investigations. So it's something that it's not in your face, but we've actually embarked doing those sort of isolated investigations collaboratively.
Okay.
Yeah.
But do you, yes,
But you see, that thing has to be a coordinated
yes,
effort. Because otherwise we will all be working in silo. We'll be doing a little bit here, a little bit here. But you see, everything from the highest to the lowest level has to be in concert. Because, we have limited resources as an island nation. And that is one major constraint. Also, you have the majority of our wetlands are located on private lands. And then where you find those wetlands are located are considered to be prime real estate. And there's a lot of competition for that particular land. So we have to define basically as a people, as a country, we have to define exactly where we want to see our wetlands, moving forward. There must be some sort of guideline to help guide, our development. Land use policies is quite important as well. And as was rightly mentioned, we are a tourism-based economy. And then instead of seeing the wetlands as a wasteland or as a dumping site, we should embrace it more so that, we could build our hotels, for example, and other industries around those things. Because a healthy wetland is not one where you will see mosquitoes and so on, bugs and stuff biting you. A healthy wetland, will help provide the enabling environment where you'll have a number of different organisms, biodiversity living together. And that, lends itself for beautiful things like ecotourism, and also livelihood-based activities like what's happening in Makote Mangrove.
Yeah. Can you say that our wetlands are under threat as you speak?
Definitely. In St. Lucia, our wetlands are tremendously degraded. Over 90% of our wetlands are in a state of degradation. There is not one wetland that we could consider to be untouched. So our wetlands are really under pressure, and if we do not make a concerted effort to preserve those ecosystems, we might end up losing them. Right now, the largest wetland ecosystem we have in St. Lucia is Makote. Right now, the largest forested.
Is it privately owned?
Well, Makote is it's on the Crown Lands. It's on Crown Lands, where it is there. Okay, so it's 40 hectares in size, and it's also a Ramsar site. It's an international site. So Ramsar more or less is the convention that helps to protect those wetlands on a global level, global scale. So we have Makote, and we also have the Savans Bay. These are the two sites of international importance we have in St. Lucia.
Okay. Well, we'll do for a break. You're watching Agriculture on the Move. Stay tuned. We'll be back soon.
Hello, OECS.
Yo, OECS, this is your ocean. If I am to protect your future, we have to work together. It's the time to work together. If I am to help protect your future. Once I used to be so pure and clean, and those hills were so fresh and green. But now you see me as your dumping ground. The current situations has me choking on your pollution. Think hard about it. You will agree that really there is no you without me. Make the zero waste pledge, be responsible. Reduce your waste, recycle where possible. It's down to you, so make the commitment. Recycle for blue oceans and our betterment. Recycle OECS, green actions, blue oceans. For blue oceans and our betterment.
Welcome back to the program, Agriculture on the Move. Of course, we're discussing World Wetlands Day. Pius, moving forward, what is in place? What programs are in place to restore our mangroves?
Right. So, in order for us to achieve that goal, we need to, as I've said, take an all hands on deck approach. We need to really raise awareness on the great importance and value of our wetlands. We need to help change people's perception of these wetlands, and doing that is not as easy as we think. So we need to target all age groups, from children going right up. Also we need to look at our legislation to help strengthen our legislative framework as it pertains to wetlands. Majority of our wetlands are on private lands, and we seem not to have that level of control over what happens there.
Can government go in and acquire those lands to ensure that the necessary activities happen?
Well, those wetlands of international significance, and those that we deem important for biodiversity conservation, in my opinion, should be looked at more seriously, more closely. But of course, government can go ahead and acquire these areas. But again, it has to do with the I guess, political will to get these things done. Also, it has to do with perhaps the location where those things are. Sometimes you find them in prime areas, and persons may not necessarily want to sell.
Nobody going to acquire you.
But yes,
I mean, if it's of importance. I mean, government can go and acquire, and then let's put them on the treasury for you.
But that could happen. So we have Makote, and then we have Savans Bay. That is under some sort of protection.
Okay. Now, fisheries now, are you saying, okay, the fish go, they spawn, right? With what we have left, are you saying we would need more of those sites for spawning of fish?
Yes, I believe it's important for us to focus on exercises such as replanting and rehabilitation of certain mangrove areas, because in some areas where the mangrove was destroyed, let's say for instance for expansion for agricultural land, and there's no more agriculture being done there, we could probably go back and do some replanting in that area to allow for more areas for nurseries and breeding grounds for our fish and other marine organisms. So I believe it would be useful.
Because there's this thing about from ridge to reef, okay? What is happening on the ridge? If they're not positive, then of course it will affect your
definitely.
Yes.
So what is happening? What can be done? Are you all working in tandem with the farmers to ensure that the correct cultural practices have been adhered to?
Well, it is a. That is why I'm saying that, you see, the work of conserving our wetlands, it has to be a multifaceted approach, because different agencies, we have extension working with the farmers, we have forestry, we have water resource management agency, fisheries, and the many others, trying to, effect change. So whatever happens on top, but of course you have the liquid waste sometimes coming down, solid waste as well. Whatever happens on top definitely reaches the sea at some point in time. Our estuaries, the vast majority of our estuaries tend to form wetlands. Where the rivers meet the sea tend to form wetlands there. So you have those riverine mangroves being formed in these areas. And so to me, it would really take a significant intervention to get persons on board, because it has to be a collaborative approach.
And more education and public awareness outreach, because I know that the farmers are being encouraged to not spray during the rainy season or when it is raining.
Because the bleaching of the
into the
chemicals.
sea.
Yeah. Also other liquid chemicals too. I know they use a lot of the vidates and
the agrochemicals.
Agrochemicals, they leach and get there.
Yes.
So a lot has to do with what we do up on the ridge.
Yes.
Yeah.
So sometimes you may have the best agricultural practices and the extensionist will want to educate the farmers. But then at the end of the day, you know, when the officers turn their backs, the farmers don't necessarily practice the good agricultural practices. So you see a lot of bad farming practices on the slopes and so on. So you have a lot of erosion, and that leads to siltation, which all goes down into the mangrove, the wetland ecosystem. And so it's a tremendous challenge for us. But I believe that it is not one that is impossible to surmount. With persistent, sustained intervention in terms of education and awareness and so on, persons will eventually get the message, and we will eventually perhaps reach but then that too has to be coupled with other initiatives like enforcement. We need to be able to enforce our laws, because one of the biggest threats to our mangrove ecosystem is the indiscriminate disposal of garbage. You can go to any of our mangroves and you will see some level of waste disposal there, either towards when you're heading into them, or even when you get there. Even from the seaside, sometimes you may find a wetland that is relatively pristine, but then there's not much waste coming from the land side, but then from the ocean, high tides and so on, the action would bring in the waste, even from the sea, because the waste is an issue around the island. You have flooding, and then the rivers go down with a lot of waste in it.
Yeah, and they come back in.
And so that is a problem. And the other issue that we have mainly with our wetlands is one of the inflow and the flow of the salt and the fresh water. Like, for example, in the case of Makote, we have a very high pollution load in Makote, and the mangrove is not being flushed. So whereas the reach to reef concept you mentioned, the flow from the land into the mangrove, and then from the mangrove into the sea, and from the sea into the mangrove, has been obstructed.
So what happens to the tree dies?
So right now, from 2009, 2010 thereabout, we have noticed dying back of the mangrove species at Makote. So you have the four major types of mangroves: the white mangrove, the red mangrove, the black, and the buttonwood. You find that, you know, these are dying. You know, we have a lot of dieback of our mangrove, and that is due mainly to the lack of flushing of the ecosystem.
I was about to end, Mr. Montu, any final words from you?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I mean, you mentioned reach to reef, and when I interjected, that's why I indicated it was a cycle. You know, it starts, you know, from the catchment, you know, and then if it springs, you know, etc. But I think one of my favorite terms is nature-based solutions, you know, just informing persons that they simply don't need to necessarily be a forester and know all different tree species, you know, so that you could actually do your part. You know, so vetiver is a simple solution. If you realize that, you know, you're bordering sort of a riverine system, you know, you could basically do your part, and at least in terms of doing some planting or some restoration.
Okay.
Yeah.
Makiba, for you, any final words from you?
Well, I believe collaboration and education will go a long way in terms of restoration and conservation of our wetlands. So the ridge to reef approach is one of the more appropriate practices that we should use, and we should encourage people and just educate them and let them know that anything that they do on land will eventually come back to them, because again, it's all a cycle and we're all connected in the ecosystem. So we could encourage people to practice better waste management techniques, better agricultural techniques and farming techniques, and also education in schools. I know that the Ministry of Agriculture, a lot of our officers go out and educate school children. There are tours and there are other national activities, especially for now, World Wetlands Day, where we do rehabilitation and other educational activities like this. So I think that's what we should look into.
Paz?
Yeah, so I would just like to urge our fellow St. Lucians to regard our wetlands as an ecosystem of importance, of value. I would just wish that, you know, we would as a nation learn to appreciate our wetlands a lot more, so that, you know, we could start doing those good practices that would help in the conservation of those fragile ecosystems. Very fragile, yet they are very important to our very lives and livelihoods.
Very good. Paz, thank you for being here. Of course, Makiba and Mr. Montu, thanks again. And I am hoping that there will be a lot of collaboration, you know, and that symbiotic kind of relationship to ensure that we save our mangroves. Thank you again for being here.
Thank you.
You've been watching Agriculture on the Move. Thank you for viewing the program. And remember, agriculture is our business. Eat fresh. St. Lucia's best. I'm Philip Sidney, saying goodbye.
You're welcome, sir.
Agriculture on the move.
Agricole mouvement.
Agriculture on the move.
Agricole en mouvement.
Agriculture on the move.
Agricole mouvement.
Agriculture on the move.
Agricole en mouvement.